Okay, so it's June 14th, SharkFest 2016. Welcome everybody, we're getting started. A couple of housekeeping notes is these links. So these, you don't have to take pictures, you don't have to write these down. This is going to be all up on the SharkFest Retro website. The replay of this session, the previous session, as I mentioned, this is part 2. Part 1 was going over some of the general things about this trace we're going to look at. And so there's a link for that. The book link that I have there is my YouTube page with the book chapters that I'm publishing. Again, this is part of the, it'll be in the retro, so you don't have to write it down or anything. When you go there, you're going to see a couple of chapter 1, chapter 2, some of the other basic Wireshark setup, etc. Okay? So if you follow the order of the video, you'll get to start from kind of the beginning and I kind of walk you through some topics that are coming up is, you know, before you do a data center migration, make sure the application can survive that migration. Okay? How do you know if it's network friendly or not? You don't, but turns out there's actually a pretty simple and quick way of identifying these things. All right? So that's it. That's the end of my PowerPoint. All right. So let's get, and I got my couple of cheat sheets here so I don't have to go stumbling around. Okay, so this is a trace file. I did the introduction on the webinar. There's a problem with this trace file. It's kind of interesting. It's broken in more ways than you can count. And some of it is easy enough to fix, some of it is not. Okay, so some of you may have heard me say that your job as packet analyst, protocol analyst, is to get a murder conviction without a body. Because as much as I want a smoking gun each and every time, you're going to be disappointed. Okay? So you want to get as much circumstantial evidence as you can to get a murder conviction without a body. All right? So it's actually kind of, it's kind of out there, but it's a perfect analogy. It's very difficult. So you want to get a large amount of, gather as much evidence as possible so that no one can refute you. All right, so, excuse me, a couple of house cleaning. So I do have more columns than the default. They're very near and dear to my heart. It's my troubleshooting thing. I need them. And if I don't, I have one here. You'll notice that it's called No Hex View. On that YouTube website, there's a link to, actually, I'll put it in this documentation. If you want to download my profiles, it'll be in the PowerPoint, so you don't have to worry about it. Okay, so this is kind of what the factory default looks like, and with colorization, which I turn off. And then this is my normal default. And then I have the one with no hex view. Okay. Why do I have them? Because I want to quickly change views and columns and add things in. And you can see here, you can kind of get an idea that if I zoom in here, you'll see that I got IP ID, I got bytes in flight, real sequence numbers, IP ID, columns, UDP, VoIP, etc. Okay, so they're very easy, quick ways of getting the columns that you want. So let me orient you to my Wireshark Delta column as displayed, must have. Okay, if you don't have it, I won't even talk to you. It's that important. Cumulative bytes is good because it kind of gives you a rolling play of how many bytes have been transferred, ballpark, you know, plus or minus type of thing. Not critical. This here is interesting. So I'm not going to go into how to set it up now, but this is the sequence number, the next expected sequence number, and the acknowledgement, and then the acknowledgement for is what packet am I acknowledging, packet number 8. So as you're troubleshooting, you get a feel for how far apart these packet trains are. Packet train is like, you know, a stream of packets that have left the station and the acts are catching up. So as you develop experience and practice, they're kind of the guiding signpost, if you will, to where you're going. Okay, so that's what these are for. I turned off the hex because I don't need it. I'm not interested in, and I used Jasper's Trace Wrangler to cut off all the data. In most cases, when you do packet analysis, you don't need the data part. Because A, it's either going to be encrypted, or B, it's stuff you don't care. Do you really care about Word documents? You care about the performance of why that Word document is not working. So oftentimes, in my experience, 75% of the time, TCP is all you need to find a shining root cause or searchlight that developers can go and figure out. Okay? All right, so with that, let's get started. First thing I do in my workflow is to page down to look at what my enemy looks like. Okay, and this is what I do. I scroll down this fast, and I get an idea of what I'm up against. Okay, trust me, the more you do it, you will figure stuff out, and I'm going to use some of these techniques today. What have I learned? There are patterns here, right? And the patterns that I'm looking for are these length columns. It's very chatty. Because the reason why I know they're very chatty is because and I can't do this on the YouTube video, but they don't stay consistent the length. So when you see this length column here go up and down, numerical count-wise, you know it's going to be chatty because there's small packets being sent back and forth. Okay? When you see an FTP job, which we'll see in just a second, when you see a big transfer, you're going to see a steady column of 1518. Right? So that's things that I'm looking for. All right, so I have this up and running because I wanted to make sure that you understand TCP has certain rules. And in the rule of TCP, it says any two packets, as soon as you receive it, send an acknowledgement. In Microsoft world, that's true. Okay, so here's an example of, look at these two packets. Okay, 192.168.1.1 is sending this and this. You can see here it's going from sequence number 1 to 125, 125 to 290. You see here my step ladder system that I have. I'm starting with sequence number 1, which means the SYN happened. I sent 124 bytes, so the next expected sequence number is 125. I start with 125, I end up at 290. So as you do that stair-step way, you quickly realize there are no gaps, no packet loss, etc. And then you know that there's an immediate acknowledgement that comes because this is acknowledgement for packet number 11, which happens to be for these two. And they're not full-size packets. Okay? So we know in the world of Microsoft, any two packets with data is enough to elicit an immediate acknowledgement. In the world of Unix, Linux, that's not true. It needs to be full MSS packets. So if you give a server two 500-byte packets, you may not see an immediate acknowledgement. It's not a political or religious thing, but I having done this for a while, I think the two any size packet acknowledgement works better. Okay, so that's the setup. So in the ideal world, in Windows, any size two packets, you get an immediate acknowledgement. In Unix, you do not. Okay, so that was easy. So then we have this trace file. So if I scroll down, like I always do, you can see what I'm talking about. Big bulks of 1518 followed by a bunch of 64s, which means they're just naked acknowledgements. So I already know it's a one-way transfer. It's pretty bulky. Okay, so this is probably a good candidate for data center migration because it's bulk transfer type application. Okay. The other things that I'm looking at, I don't see too many informational things here other than just ACKs. So there's probably not a whole lot going on in terms of my next step, which is TCP analysis.flags. Okay, so you can type TCP.analysis.flags here. I'm lazy, so I created a button. And you'll notice that that's the only button there. I'm a creature of habit. It takes phenomenal convenience for me to make it up to that bar. That's like my Hall of Fame. So far, TCP analysis.flag is the only one that I found worthwhile. Otherwise, I'm used to typing it, so I just type it. You'll notice here there's no retransmissions. There's nothing. This is the bracket that I was looking for when I was scrolling down. And without having done this, as I scrolled down, I already knew this trace was pretty clean. Because if there were retransmissions, duplicate acts, etc., you would see this bracket as you scroll down. Okay, let me demonstrate. Notice it's just the port numbers. The pattern doesn't change. So that's how I know very quickly what I'm up against. Okay, and then I combine it with TCP analysis.flags. Next step, I go by delta. Typically, you sort by delta. that's your root cause most of the time, or at least that's the most interesting point to start. So I start, I sort by delta column, I scroll to the bottom, and a couple things that jump out right away. What are they? We have a bunch of 194s, 194 millisecond delays. Okay, so we know there's a 200 millisecond delay timer, so that's probably what that could be. It's in one direction, 192.168 1.0, sending it to 10. It makes sense because this was a bulk transfer coming from 10 going to 192.168 guy. So 192.168 is the receiver, 10.10 is the sender. These are all naked acknowledgements with about 116, that's a little interesting. And then 194, 195 milliseconds, followed by horrendously bad 3.2 seconds. So, in just a couple of steps, I've identified some interesting things to look for. One of them is, okay, this one is a naked acknowledgement. I know that. It seems to fall under all these criteria. Nothing seems to be too different about these packets, and yet it's 116 milliseconds. The reason why I'm interested in that 116 millisecond, it's a random number. When you see a pattern like 194, 195, 200, that's okay. Those are things that are being generated by some kind of system, right? TCP stack is doing it. The application has a very, repeatable patterns. So those are good things. But when I see an oddball like 116, it does jump into I file it away in my little brain going, that might be worth a look. Because I can't understand why a naked acknowledgement would take 137 milliseconds. Okay? And those of you who are eagle-eyed might already know why that 116 is kind of an oddball. Because it's a what packet? Windows Update. Okay? So somewhere along the line, Windows Update, by the way, not all Windows updates are critical. It just means Windows went down, window came up. I don't care. As long as I don't hit 0, as long as it doesn't prevent me from transmitting, do I care? No, not really. Okay? This one is interesting because it seems to indicate that Windows Update took over 116 milliseconds. That's unusual. And that's why it's of interest to us. Okay? Like I said, I think this is advertised as advanced session, so those of you that are new, it's okay, hang in there. But for the benefit of all the others, I'm just not going to spell out everything. I'll just call it out to your attention. Okay. All right. So let's go back to packet number 1 and start the first SYN-SYN-ACK analysis. As you heard me and Jasper say over and over, you need all 3, not SYN-SYN-ACK. It's not enough. You need SYN-SYN-ACK to find reliable round trip time. Immediately, we know what kind of environment are we dealing with here. Okay? There's no wide area network involved. Look at those delta times for those SYN-SYN-ACK. Okay? It's a LAN segment. It's a data center segment. Because everything is in the microsecond range. 254 microsecond is the longest delay. And then where am I capturing from? 192.168 or 10 dot? I'm capturing from the 10 dot guy. Right? How do I know that? Because, yep, so this is, you just follow the kind of the Big Bang theory. It was darkness until this first SYN packet showed up. And I start my clock. At this point, I don't know if 192.168 is my guy that I'm capturing close to, or if I'm on the other side. Okay? So this is my Big Bang. Darkness lifted, I got packet here. And then 85 microseconds later, the 10 dot guy replies. At this point, you can reasonably conclude you might be closer to the 10 dot guy because you're seeing this SYN-ACK, which is a TCP stack function, not an application function, happen very, very quick. And then sure enough, 254 microseconds later, the other guy acknowledges me. Some corroborative, evidence is also in the MAC address. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The 10 dot guy is a Hewlett-Packard server. It's a host going to HSRP. So that's another evidence in your favor. 192.168 guy is coming from Cisco's burned-in address to Hewlett-Packard. Okay, so for those of you guys who are not routing savvy, Cisco router going from, so if you're the router and you're sending a packet out to somebody in your segment, you use what's called a BIA address, burned in address. That's the MAC address that belongs to your interface. When the other guy is talking to you, the router, in almost all cases, they use an HSRP router. Okay, so that's, again, you put these things together and you know you're probably capturing from either the 10.host or very, very close at a layer 2 hop away from the 10.guy. All right, so the first thing we see here is the client 192.168.1.0 sent a packet to the server. It's 374 bytes, 373 bytes. Start of film, let's start, let's talk, let's open up, do the application level stuff. Who knows what that is? Quite frankly, I don't really care. But then, immediately, something interesting happens. Which is what? What's the next packet? It's an acknowledgement. I made it easy for you guys, right? So when I tee up these easy questions, you got to answer. Acknowledgement for 4, right? Yeah. I'm sorry?
New batteries for the laser.
Oh, new battery for the laser. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, very bright.
So I may get distracted here because of my, but anyway. This is interesting because look at the timer for a single packet that came to me. The other guy, 192.168 client, sent me a 373 byte packet, and the server did what? He acknowledged it in a millisecond. So what do we know about this server, the 10. Server? Someone went mucked with it. Because normally, Windows or Unix or Linux, you require 2 packets for the acknowledgement. But here, I don't care if you're Windows or Linux, if you get 1 small packet, you're not supposed to acknowledge that right away, unless you, the 10. Server, had something to send anyway. So if the sequence of event is, the client sent a 373 byte packet, the server says, you know what, I have something to send to you anyway, so I'll just piggyback that ACK. That's what it's called, piggyback ACK, right? I have something to send to you, why wait the delayed timer? I'll just send you the acknowledgement and catch you up. In this case, though, it's a naked ACK. Length is 0. So I already know the administrator of this server mucked around and changed how TCP is supposed to act. My first clue. Everybody with me? Okay. So let's look at the next packet then. There is a 21 millisecond delay, and the server sends a stream of large packets. So there's 21 milliseconds that you see here. Whose fault is that? What would you categorize that as? Network slowness or application slowness? Yeah. Wow, that's resounding. Most of you guys are network guys. You've heard it all, I'm sure. The network is slow. Nowadays, network isn't too slow that much, but the applications typically are. I should know because I make a very good money, company-wise, making applications run faster, right? Because I work for Riverbed. So my little plug. So 21 milliseconds is not a big deal, but yes, question?
I have a question on packet 4. I had thought that packet 5 was wanted to be activated because packet 4 push flag set.
Okay, so hold that thought. So I don't want to get into the rat hole of what does push mean. So the question was, since packet number 4 had the push bit set, shouldn't the 10.guy immediately acknowledge that? Okay, that was the question. We're going to take that, as they say, offline, because that's yet another session that I did, and it took 30 minutes to do it. Okay, so that's why I don't want to go down that rat hole. So that's a very cogent observation, but we'll table it for now, and then we'll talk about it later. And we'll revisit that topic here. Okay, so then the 10. Server, after 21 milliseconds of application delay, starts out sending packets. And you'll notice he sent 2 packets, and the client 192.168 sent an acknowledgement. He sent 2 full-size packets, regardless of operating system, you immediately acknowledge, and sure enough, that happens, okay? So that's good. Then we see 1, 2, 3 packets being sent. That's odd. Not really. The fact that this is something that trips up beginners. The fact that there's an acknowledgement here at packet number 12 is totally immaterial, because the 10.guy has ample window size to transmit, and the client has ample receive window to receive. Okay, so don't get caught up in the fact that 192.168 showed up and somehow there's a dependency there. That's not really how it happens in this case, because we know, again, the send window is big enough, receive window is big enough. I can spew out as much data as the window size allows me, and I don't care if I see one acknowledgement from the other guy. Okay? It just so happens that 192.168 acknowledged it for me. Make sense? Okay. Having just said that, in this case, it is special. This is why packet analysis, the deeper you go into it, the deeper you have to file these things away. All right? So it's kind of like, the best way I can describe it is if you go back to your calculus days, they tell you it can't be done, you can't solve it. Next day, oh yeah, but this guy figured out a theorem and we can solve it. Right? So it's the same thing. Here, this is important because this is the beginning of a what? 2 packet, followed by 3 packet, followed by an acknowledgement, followed by a 4 packet, followed by an acknowledgement. What's happening here? Slow start. Okay, TCP is feeling out what the network is like. So far, so good. Okay, slow start is nothing more, for those of you that are starting out, shifting from first gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear, fifth gear, etc. That's it. So nothing interesting so far, other than the Linux, or the server acted slightly odd for the first packet. Okay, then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and an acknowledgement. So far, so good. Okay? Maybe, maybe not. Because what was the rule again? You're supposed to acknowledge every 2 packets. So if we slow down our time, we know there's microseconds of delay. You can argue that from this guy, because these are 12 microseconds, maybe the 192.168 didn't have time, and by the time, it was coming in so fast, by the time he said, it's time for me to acknowledge, I'll just acknowledge all 4. Why go back in time and acknowledge the 2 just because the rule says that it is, right? We can reasonably believe that. Yes? Everybody with me? Okay, so file that away and let's keep going. So now here we have another packet train that's leaving, a big chunk. It's all part of the same packet. You'll hear me say packet train, meaning the application sent this many data, this much data, and however many packets that make up, that's a packet train. Okay, that's my terminology for it. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and he acknowledged packet number 25. So 5 packets left. There's more here. So for now, just stay with me, and let's look at the first 5 that left the packet train, because we're not all caught up here. Look at what packet number 22 is acknowledging. Exactly. Okay? Packet number 22 is acknowledging packet number 20, which is here. So this guy hasn't been acknowledged yet, even though in chronological order, you see it 1, 2, 3, 4, and then acknowledgement. Everybody with me? Okay? So even though this is the next packet, he's really saying, I'm acknowledging and I'm all caught up to packet number 20. So packet 21 is hanging out there. So let's start from him and follow him down to packet number 23. Still no ACK. 24, 25, I get an acknowledgement. How many packet is that? 1, 2, 3, 4. So far, so good. But again, we have 4 packets and 1 acknowledgement. Still very fast, so we can still believe it's super fast, so I get 4 and I acknowledged it instead of 2. Okay? Everybody's with me, right? So I'm over here at packet number 25. So 26 has not been acknowledged yet as far as we know. So let's keep going down. 26, 27, 28. But hold on a second, what just happened? The acknowledgement 4 down in the lower part of my screen is what? Acknowledgement number what? 27. So we're at 25. Okay? So we got 26 and 27 unaccounted for. And we look into the future because we have the trace file, and he acknowledged 2 packets this time. So lower window, maybe. So why did we bring up this thing about the window size? Because at some point, if the window size goes down too low, it prevents you from troubleshooting. I'm sorry, prevents you from transmitting, right? It's a good thought. But we know we didn't see a window size of 0, so it didn't completely stop. So let's take a look at the window size. So between here, I see window size of 51372 and 48452. What's the difference? Two 1460s. Okay? So we see a pattern developing here, which is the window size is decreasing by the time I acknowledge it, but my window size haven't caught up yet, meaning the application didn't pick it up from the receive buffer yet. Does that make sense? Because remember, there's a waiting room for TCP, right? Those of you that have gone to my other sessions, you know that if I'm the TCP stack, you're my buffer, you're my receive window size, I can queue up packets and then give it to the application, right? That's what a receive buffer is for. Okay, so we know that window size is going down, but that's okay. Window size is supposed to go down if I'm utilizing my buffer effectively. So let's keep going. So I'm okay up to 27. The next packet that gets acknowledged is 31, right? We know that because we go from 27 to 31. So we're good up to 27. So we got 29, 30, 31. Now we've acknowledged 3 packets. That's odd. We went from 4 to 2, which is okay, that's normal, but then 3. And then you'll notice the window size between here and here is, I'll do the math for you, 44072, 2, down here, 48452, 4380 divided by 1460, 3 of them. Okay? So this is the pattern that we were looking for. It's happening. I can't account for the fact that it acknowledged 4 packets, then it acknowledged 2 packets, and now we're on to 3 packets. What the hell's going on? Let's keep going. So we are up to 31, we know that, right? So let's go to 31 here. So I'm all caught up to there from this guy saying I'm good to packet number 31. So we need to account for packet number 32 and up, and then we know it goes up to 35. We know it goes up to 35 because we can look into the future with my ACK4 column, and it goes up to 35. So we need to account for 31, 32, and 35. Again, 3. And you'll notice that the window size went down by 3. Okay? So now, down here, my window size is at 39692. Okay? So what's happening so far is that the receive buffer is filling up. The application may not have had the time to come pick them up, because otherwise my window size would go up. Right? Make sense? Window size is telling the sender, this is how much I can receive from you. It keeps going down, means I'm filling up the buffer, but the application is not picking it up. And that's okay, because look at the amount of time that's been, it's only been 26 milliseconds. Yes, it's a long time, but so far I'm not going to freak out. Okay? I'm not going to freak out until I get down to a point where the receive buffer is full and the other guy cannot transmit, because I don't have any more space to guarantee delivery. All right? So let's keep going. So I'm good up to 35, which is here. Okay? The next one that gets acknowledged is 37 down here. So we know we've got 36, 37. Again, 2. And if you do the math, you'll notice that this went down by 2 1460s. So I got a problem right now. Well, I got a lot of problems. But this trace file is weird. 4 packets gets acknowledged, 3 packets gets acknowledged, back to 2, now back to 3. So I'm trying to make sense of what is going on. Okay? Everybody with me, right? Remember, ask questions. If you're thinking it, someone else is thinking it too. All right. So we got 37. And we'll do this a couple more, and then I'm going to jump to some other sections where we can delve into a little bit more of this trace file. We may not be able to fix it, but we can sure tell the application developers what may be the problem, okay? Or the operating system, for that matter. All right, so let's keep going for just a little bit, because I'm looking for a pattern. I haven't found a smoking gun. I kind of have a feel that window size is going down by the amount of data that I'm sending. Makes perfect sense. That's exactly what's supposed to happen. Let's see if the window size catches up. Was there a question? No? Okay. All right, so 37 to 41. So I'm good up to 37. So let's scroll up a little bit more. I'm caught up all the way up to 37. And the next packet that we're supposed to see is 41. So we got to account for this guy, this guy, this guy. Again, 3 packets. So at least it's a wacky pattern, but there seems to be some pattern, right? 3 packets. So let's keep going. Next one is, so I'm up to 41. Let me reduce the list a little bit. By the way, that screen, is that visible enough in the back? Yeah? Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm at 41 to 45. So I accounted for up to 41. The next one we know is going to be 45. So that means that's going to be this guy. 1, 2, 3. Again, it's 3. Let's look at his window size. And now I'm down to 28. Not concerned yet, but getting there. Okay? Then we get to here. I'm at 47. So I'm good and caught up to 47. The next one that he acknowledges is 51, which is 1, 2, 3. Okay, again, it seems to be in the multiples of 3, but so far so good. After 51 is 55. So that's 1, 2, 3. That's 55. So far so good. The next one is 59. 1, 2, 3. Again, we're having a pattern here, right? So I'm good up to 59. And what happens after 59 is 61. 1, 2. This is where it gets a little bit weird again. Why?
The server quit transmitting, waiting for the catch up.
The server quit transmitting. Well, actually, he didn't quit transmitting, right? He's still banging away from here to here. He's still banging away. But
Oh, okay, just got a bunch of acts all in.
yeah, exactly. Yep. Okay. So here we know that I'm good up to 59. I'm all caught up to 59. The next 2 packets are these guys, and the acknowledgement happened again, 330 microseconds.
Either the application caught up or resources allowed the application to use more.
Well, no, because we're still transmitting, right? Hold that though for a second. In the back, you had a.
It looks like from the time over there that those were real quick, so that maybe the application freed up just enough to acknowledge them all at once.
Okay, so the theory is that application is catching up maybe, and so instead of waiting for 3 packets, I can acknowledge 2, except who does the acknowledgement? TCP stack. Does the application get involved in that? No. TCP stack's doing it. Okay, so maybe TCP stack is catching up. It's possible. There is a way to check that to a certain degree, and that's looking at IP ID. Because IP ID is unique to the system itself, and however many sockets you have open, they all share the IP ID. So if you see IP ID jumping around madly all over the place, that means that server on the other side is pretty busy. If you see a sequential IP ID, he's talking to you, and that's the only socket he's got open. And if you check the IP ID here, it's pretty consistent. Okay.
Why is packet 61 1354?
Yeah, why is that? That's the odd part. Okay, so because you know that a Unix system is supposed to acknowledge every 2 full-size packets. Did I get 2 full-size packets? No. I got 2 packets. But then maybe it's Windows. Maybe, maybe not. Okay? But the point is, I got a packet that's smaller than 1518. Why is that? Well, the first clue here is that there's a push bit set. So this is what the application was willing to give us. Meaning, the application said to TCP, here's a bunch of data, go transmit it. And then when you're done, I'll give you more. I'm not going to give you a steady stream of application data to transmit to the other side. So TCP did what it could. When he got to the end of it, this was just a leftover 1296. Okay? Does that make sense? So if you do the count, actually, there's, I believe, 44 of full-size packets followed by 1296. Okay? And I'm going to show you that pattern in just a second. So there's 44, 1460, and then we have 1296 of data byte. That comes to 65536. Make sense? These are numbers that you should pay attention to because they're in the power of 2, and that's what we call 64K, right? So that's good. Except there's a problem. There's a potential problem, which is what? So 64K or 65536 is fine, right? It's a number that we all know. 64K, 1024, right? If you count by 1024. Let's go back to the window size. The guy that's receiving has a window size 64512. You know what that's off by? I'll do the math for you because I know it's early morning. 65536 to 64512, 1024. So somehow this TCP stack lost 1024 bytes when it created the window size from the full 64K. It's possible that someone was fine-tuning the window size for the optimal transfer and decided to use 64512. Or maybe there's some kind of offload in action and wanted to make sure it could account for TCP options and chopped away 1024 bytes. Because remember, when you use SAC, selective acknowledgement, and timestamps and all these other new, not so new anymore, but newer-ish TCP options, you can't use 1460 MSS because options take up space. Okay, selective acknowledgement, all these newfangled updates to TCP, sliding window, window scaling, they all take up header, so it's not 1460 anymore. So somehow we lost 1024 bytes. That's something that we want to, so what do I have right now? Let me kind of summarize. I have a server that acknowledged right away. Maybe it's the push bit, maybe it's not, even though it was only 1 packet. We have an application that seems to fill the buffer, which is okay because I didn't hit 0 window, but I potentially see a problem where the application wants to send 65536 worth of data, and one of the window sizes is short by 1024. I can see a scenario up ahead where the application said, here's 64K data to send. Oh, too bad, your window size runs out at 64512. So now I got 1024 bytes hanging out there that has to be transmitted, and that's going to cause a delayed acknowledgement to happen. What's a delayed acknowledgement to happen? I didn't get 2 full-size packets or 2 packets, so I only got 1. I have to wait. I wait for a timer to go off, and then I acknowledge you. Okay? So far, we didn't hit that because the window size was able to keep up. Does that make sense? Okay. Normally, I don't go this fast, but I'm trying out my step into my brain thing, so that's why I'm kind of... So I need your feedback. If you hate it, tell me, and I'll go slower. All right? All right, so everybody's with me so far, right? So I'm collecting these bodies of evidence. All right, so we don't see a huge penalty to that, so let's move on. Let's keep going. And you'll notice that as I scroll down and go down to where we were, the pattern keeps happening, okay? So you'll notice as I page down, look at that 1518 column, and you're going to see there was one that happened, 1354, right there, okay? Trust me, you can pick up these patterns, even though I'm going that fast, okay? And then right there was another one, looks like, 1354. How can you possibly tell? Because I'm looking for a little wiggly thing happening in that column. That's all it takes. Your brain can pick it up, okay? Make sense? So far we have a pattern that's developing. We're transferring 65536 worth of data. We have a window size of 64512. That's a potential problem. Windows buffer seems to go down, 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 up, and then come back up, right? Okay, so remember when we sorted by delta, there was that 116 millisecond delay guy that was of interest? Let's see what that guy was all about. So let's go find him again. It's here, 137, packet number 137. So his window update said, hey, I'm at 4096 now. He didn't open it up a whole lot, but he's saying that previously it probably went to a very, very small number. And sure enough, we got down to 436. This is what this means. This transfer that's happening up here was sitting in the buffer and all in the buffer, and the buffer filled up to 433.56. Take a couple of 1460s away, and you're down to 436. I'm at a point where the other guy cannot transmit anymore, right? Because he doesn't have enough. He's got to transfer 1518, but he doesn't have enough windows receive buffer size. So I have to sit there and wait. And I waited 116 milliseconds for the buffer to go up to 4096. So I went from, my entire buffer was full. I only had 436 left in my buffer. You guys are my buffer. All the chairs, empty chairs are my available space. I'm down to 436 people that I can seat now. But there's a truck coming, or bus coming with 1460 passengers. So I told the driver, sit tight. I don't have room for 1460 passengers. And then, 116 milliseconds later, the client says, yep, you know what? I can handle 4096 customers. And off we go to the races. Okay? I can transfer 2, and then I wait. At least the window size finally caught up to 64512 here. Does that make sense? Yes?
How come you don't have a window size column?
So did you put her up to that, Saki? No? So
I asked him, and then he said you should say that out loud.
Yes. So the question was, why don't I have window size column? Because my resolution on this projector is too small. If I add the window column, I miss the axe, and so I picked the lesser of the two evil.
Okay.
That's why. Okay? Because all I have to do is add this, right-click on it, and say apply as a column.
You know, you can kill your addresses. You don't really need them. You got your port.
I know, but it's my way or the highway. If I take the address column away, where my brain needs to look is wrong. And I'll be sitting here looking at what's 1.140.900 address. Doesn't make any sense. And my brain will get tripped up. It sounds stupid, but that's the way I am. My OCD kicks in, and so that's the reason why. Okay, so that's why I'm kind of slowing down to look at the window size, but very great observation there. Okay, all right, so far we have a problem. What is my problem here? In a modern day application, 116 milliseconds is an eternity. It is. Any application developer will tell you 116 milliseconds is a long time. So why did this guy take 116 milliseconds to update his window size? Could he be busy? Maybe, right? Was he overwhelmed? Was there an antivirus kicking up? I don't know. This is where you need to start looking at system level stuff, because I'm starting to gather evidence that 192.168 slowed us down here, because that buffer size should have been cleared. Okay? As the data is coming in a modern day operating system and class of PCs, your buffer should be cleared up very quickly. Okay? Everybody agree on that, right? Maybe this is a weak-ass machine. Maybe. So now we're going to start gathering evidence. Is that yes or no? I'm asking questions, I'm putting up theories, and I'm going to shoot it down using packet analysis and experience. Okay? Make sense? All right, so now we know why that Windows update, the fact that it was random number 116 caught my eye, even though it's a naked acknowledgement, because this TCP window. Okay, so my system is working, right? Scroll down, see what the evidence is like. TCP analysis.flag, you know what you're up against. And then sort by delta column, you find some weird offenders, look out for the outliers, and you start troubleshooting there. The other guy was at 3-second delay, right? Remember that? So we'll look at that in just a second. Okay, so I'm going to do a cooking show because I have 30 minutes left, and jump to, this pattern repeats itself, but I'm not going to bore you to death. So let's look at 757, it says here. Okay, so this is the start of a new packet train. Except there's an interesting thing as you scroll down here. This is one of the 195 millisecond deltas that I was curious about. Okay? And this pattern repeats itself again and again and again and again. How do I know? I'm going to scroll up. Okay? Keep your eye on the delta column because your eyes get adjusted very quickly to these non-changing zeros in the beginning. But if I scroll up, right there, it kind of went and I scroll back down and there it is. There's the guy. Okay? I laughed out loud. That's the one time that you can use the word literally to mean what it really means. I laughed out loud when I watched Matrix. Why? Because when Neo was walking up the stairs and the cat went, I laughed because that's in my brain, that's what happens. That little okay? So some of you are thinking about what the hell? Anyway, it's a technology conference, you got to talk about Matrix and a few other, John Wick maybe. So your packet foo will be very strong if you keep practicing and looking for these jittering things. That's what I really look for. Okay, I'm here to tell you this is my process and it works, but you have to train. All right, so we are now seeing delta of 195 and we see a repeating pattern of it, right? So I showed you as I scroll down. So why is that 195 millisecond happening? Let's go back in time to see, let's rewind, find out what the hell's causing that. So we'll notice here ACT 4, 708, 711, 714, 719, 722, 724. These are all happening in 2s and 3s, whatever. Okay, I already know it flips from 3 to 2 or 4 sometimes. So that part I already get. I'm not as interested in that yet. So why did 739, oh crap, 739 and 740, which is one packet apart, why was there 195 milliseconds? So let's go to packet 739. Which is right here. Aha, you say. It's that straggling single packet that shows up. Remember what I act for, okay? So let me scroll back down. Let me move this down a little bit. I act 735, okay. Then 739, okay. The very next packet, so I'm all caught up to 739. That's what this, I'm acknowledging 739 means. I'm all caught up to 739. We're all good to go. And then all of a sudden you send me a single packet that's smaller than a full frame. I'm now forced to wait for what? Timeout or 2 full-size packets, okay? Because I'm assuming this is Unix, so it needs 2 full-size packets. But we didn't see a timeout earlier. We sent a small packet and we didn't wait 195 milliseconds delay. Do you remember that earlier? As I was going down and calculating the 44 times 1296, that guy didn't have a delay. Why the delay now? Mystery. Okay? So what could we look at? What could tell us if 192.168 guy is busy what could tell us if the 10 dot guy is busy, but 10 dot guy is innocent here, right? He's the one that's sending. He can only send whatever the application gives him, right? We know that. The push bit right here is that clue that the application said, go transfer this, and then I'll give you the rest. Everybody with me on that, right? That's a chunk size. That's what I call the chunk size. So then why the hell, all of a sudden, did this guy slow down, wait for that straggler? Which is the right thing to do, by the way. I only got a single packet. I have to wait for a timer to go off. And then that's what he did. Except it bothers me a little bit because it's 195 milliseconds, not 200 or 200 plus round trip time. So that bothers me a little bit too, okay? Most timers are on even numbers. 75, 150, 200 milliseconds. These are numbers that you want to look out for, plus round trip time. Don't forget the round trip time, okay? Because it signifies a system-generated event, a TCP stack-generated numbers. These are all things that you add up into a clue. So what the hell is happening here? What can we look at to figure out how 192.168 is doing? Anybody remember what we do? How do we know if the application or the OS of 192.168 is a weak-ass machine or a pretty beefy machine? I'm waiting. IP ID? Yep. You can see the IP ID to see if it's changing wildly. So while I have this IP ID column here, just so she won't yell at me, I do have it for the sake of, because then the font sizes, anyway, it's a whole thing. If you look at it from down here, you'll see it's 9077, 9079, 81, 83, 85. That's weird, huh? It's going up by 2. Does that mean that he's duplexing and he's talking to one other guy? No, it doesn't mean. IP ID is slightly inaccurate science. It's not needed. You could put zeros there. You could put the same numbers there. It doesn't matter. The only time IP ID comes into play is when you fragment the packet. Because the offset is where the IP ID is used to say, hey, this is a broken up packet, and the offset is over here, and use the IP ID to make sure it's the same one and put it back together. So IP ID has no meaning, no use in life unless you fragment the packet. It just so happens that most systems increment by 1. Why is this guy incrementing by 2? Because it's a financial app or market data related application. Over time, my experience has been that market data related servers, financial servers, increment by 2. Why? I don't know. Okay? My theory is that someone did it and then everybody copied it. Or they thought powers of 2, maybe 2 is faster, who knows, okay? So these are all, possibility. So don't worry about the fact that, because it's consistent, right? IP ID going up by 2 is consistent, but I just happen to know market data, trading, they go up by 2, not a big deal. Now, let's look at, what other things can we look at besides the IP ID? How fast am I clearing out the buffer? And I know that by looking at what? Receive window size, right? So let's look at 192, the guy is the guy that's receiving. Let's look at the window size. Even though we can't add it to the column, we can see it at the bottom there. 64, you keep your eye down here as I scroll down. 64512. Oh, I got to use my laser. I should use my laser. Right there. Okay? Look right there. So now, this is the beginning of the packet train from top. So if I go to packet number 700, you'll notice up here, this is all packet train coming down. All these packets left the station all in one shot because there's ample window size. So I come down to here and I start acking right away. Bang, bang. All these trains are coming in and I'm acking. Sometimes 2, sometimes 3. That's weird, but I got over that. So let's look at the window size. 64,512, that's good. 64,512, that's good. 64,512, that's good. 64,512, that's good, that's good, that's good, that's good, that's good. We now have absolute proof that 192.168 1.10 is not a weak-ass machine. Because as fast as these guys are coming, in microseconds, no less, the receive buffer size does not go down. That means I'm handing off my data to the application as fast as I'm getting them, right? That's what it means. I'm emptying out my buffer as fast as I'm getting them. 644, 512, 512, 512. Oh, wait a minute, what happened there? It did the Neo thing. Okay? It did, right? If you're keeping an eye on that lower screen, it absolutely went brrr, and it went to 63216. What's the difference between this guy and this guy? Exactly 1,296 bytes. Why is that significant? Because that is the size of the straggler. The little straggler packet that makes up that 65536 is 1296. That's the leftover bit. And that's the guy that causes this acknowledgement to sit tight and wait, and wait, and wait, and then send it up to the application. So you might say that's a delayed ACK problem, right? It absolutely is a delayed ACK problem. I'm only getting one packet, except we saw evidence to the contrary earlier when he got that one single odd packet and he didn't wait. He sent it up to the application right away. Am I making sense here? Okay, so I have two conflicting behavior here. He waited like he's supposed to, but earlier he didn't. And then in this case, even though he's waiting, he's off by 5 milliseconds. That's suspicious. 5 milliseconds is a lot. Why is he not waiting? Packet train. Same thing happened. Bunch of packet trains leave the station, followed by the little straggler. They make up the 65536 worth of data, followed by little wiggling here of the application. Okay? Does that make sense? All right, so if we keep going, and I go to, I went past it here. Let's see here. Down in 432. So this is the guy. So I'm at a new packet train here. I can hit Control T. That's a useful shortcut to reset the time. So if you notice what happens here, my cumulative byte, when you hit Control T, which is set time reference, this is your new Big Bang. This is the new beginning of time. Okay, notice the cumulative byte zeroes out and the time reference zeroes out. So this is not, it's not 5 seconds into the trace. It now zeroes out. So you can kind of get a feel for how much time has elapsed. Okay, and also the cumulative bytes. So if I'm looking down here, I'm going to start to see the same pattern develop. He's banging away, and let's see when the acknowledgement starts to happen. Okay. Acknowledgement, the first acknowledgement that we see here, and the time that's elapsed is 643 microseconds. Okay? So within 643 microseconds, at least the first couple of packets started to show up. Let's go up to the top. Let's go up and pick some random transfer. This guy, okay? So here's, well, let's go up a little bit more. So let's look for the next packet train, which is right here. So you'll notice this huge packet train happening. Let me go up, page up, page up. So this is my start of time, Control T, and I page down again till my first acknowledgement that shows up, which is here. 114 microsecond. 114 microsecond. And that's when the acknowledgement for 511 showed up. Okay? So let's go down. So here's another packet train. Let's hit Control T. Beginning of time. I scroll down, page down. First acknowledgement, 119 microseconds. That's good, right? It's consistent. I like consistency. Page down some more. New packet train. Let's hit Control T here. Page down. First acknowledgement, 237 microseconds. Uh-oh, it doubled in time. But still 200 microsecond. What's 100 microsecond among friends, right? Don't care, just file it away. Let's go down, page up. hit Control T, page down. First acknowledgement here, 118. Now we're back. So now we see this transient behavior. What you're going to see as you scroll down some more and more is that this number does go up quite a bit. 139 microseconds. It's going to go up to, we saw earlier, what is it? Packet number, let's go to 819. So from here, this time reference, if we scroll down to the first acknowledgement that shows up, it is, oh, this one's 125. Is it 125? Did I miss one? Yeah, okay, 125. But we saw one that was like 400, 600 microseconds. Okay, so these times are going up. That means that 192, 168 must be busy doing something else because the first act shows up 600 microseconds later versus 118 microseconds. Again, it's inconsistent. Okay, so I'm bothered by that. The other thing that I'm bothered by, which is 819 is the start of the new packet train. So let's go to 819. Here we go. Okay, so we start following the packet train again. And the first acknowledgement is 821. What's wrong with that 821 acknowledgement? What makes you go, that's weird?
Which packet was it in the train?
You have to speak up. Remember, I have hearing loss.
Which packet was it in the train?
Oh, so which packet was it in the train? So let's answer that. Which was, this is the beginning of packet train. 3. So it's consistent. But what's wrong? What makes me go, Exactly. 125 microseconds for him to acknowledge it. Right? If you go and look at this trace file, it number changes. Yes?
I'm just guessing now, but usually when I see 12 to 13 microseconds and again 124 to 128, it's exactly the time difference between two fully sized segments, either on 100 megabits or on gigabits. So depending on the other traffic, which is called a card, it comes transmit faster than every 125 microseconds.
Okay.
If he's transmitting fully sized packet before, it might be the day before you can put another.
So you're talking about serialization delay? Yes. Okay. So there's a thing called serialization delay, and that's how fast can you push 1500. So for example, I'll give you the serialization delay of a T1 for a full-size Ethernet is how many milliseconds? About 8 milliseconds. You can't get a full-size Ethernet across a T1 faster than 8 milliseconds because it's 1.5 megabits per second. You just do the math. It takes 8 milliseconds to send to 1500. So it could be a serialization delay. Okay? But what you'll see is as you go up and down, this number changes wildly. Sometimes it's 200, 300, 400, 600 microseconds. And then if you come down to here, and let's look at acknowledgement number, sorry. Let's go back to A19, my beginning of time. And I'm looking for the acknowledgement that starts coming in here. And we have here, let me see here. So we got 821, 824, 827, 830, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden here, we see that 195 milliseconds again. Same behavior happens. The window size goes from full to this guy. Okay? So how do we fix this application? At least get rid of these 195. Because even though this is a LAN segment, what happens when you send it across the wide area network? Is there any impact to this if you send it across the wide area network? I got 10 minutes.
Yeah, if you start adding those up, you're going to get a lot more delay.
So you're not going to take away the 195 milliseconds, but you are going to add additional round trip time for some of the feedback to happen, right? The good news here is that it seems to be pretty big. Good news is that it's sending 65536 worth of data. So what can you do to help this application? You can make the window size to be even multiples of 1460. That forces this odd packet to not show up as much. Okay? Does that make sense? So if you divide the 65536 by 1460, that gives you a number, like, whatever, and then you round it up to even multiple and make that the window size. Then you're guaranteed to fit as much as you can possibly fit for 65536. You might think, it won't matter, you don't need to get that detailed, but it does. Because if you're transferring hundreds of megabytes of data, those 195 milliseconds of delay that's caused by suboptimal window size and transfer chunk size makes all the difference. Okay? If you take it across a wide area network, it can be the difference between 3-day transaction or a 5-minute transaction. That's how much an impact it can have. Okay? So this is a long-winded way of saying this application was broken because the server admin tweaked TCP window to his heart's content with every article that he read on the Windows, in the internet. Okay? The other thing that I mentioned during the webinar is called interrupt coalescing. I brought that up because I thought that was what was happening. Interrupt coalescing is where the NIC is trying to cheat and do it work faster. What that leads to is this behavior of acting 2 packets, 3 packets, 4 packets, 2 packets, 1 packets, 3 packets. It may or may not be happening here, but it's not inconsistent enough for me to say it's interrupt coalescing. Okay? I did a session on interrupt coalescing. Read up on it. If you're a financial, anybody here from financial, raise show of hands, okay, you guys, it's the death knell to your trading system if you have interrupt coalescing turned on. Because ironically, in trying to make it go faster, make the network card run faster, make the network card respond faster, it sometimes responds to every 3rd packet instead of 2. Because it's so fast, he gets 2 and says, you know what, I might as well acknowledge 3 packets. And the problem with that is you end up with the delayed act problem. Okay? So for you guys in the financials, in this trading environment, look up interrupt coalescing and make sure it's turned off. Okay? Now, does that make sense? So this was something new that I tried, which was kind of, step into my brain. Everything that I talked out loud is the way I troubleshoot. I file things away. I want to now give you another example of a problem that occurred, and it's Citrix. And I only have 6 minutes, but that's okay, because all the steps that are needed, we already troubleshot. This is let me give you the use case. Citrix clients locking up. The network is slow. We've heard it, but the problem with troubleshooting VDI is that you can't depend on delta times because people are working on their screen and it's just inconsistent, right? So you can't kind of go with that as a surefire indicator. Make sense? All right. So again, I page down, and sure enough, this is exactly what VDI is supposed to look like. You can disregard the packet size limited during capture. Don't worry about that. They're typically small size. In VDI, when all of a sudden the packet size goes large, it's either they're printing or the window scrape is happening. There's a lot of activity that's happening, or they're watching video maybe. The other thing here is that the column here, the delta column, again, you can't really go by it as much because this is humans working on keystrokes, right? If I'm not typing something, maybe that's the delay. But there's also on the information column, besides the packet size limited, there's a lot of movement there. Okay, so I know this is kind of a dirty trace. Just by going down and looking at that block of change happening on the right-hand side, I know this is going to be a dirty trace file. I prove it by doing TCP analysis.flag. Okay. Now, the first thing you should do, and I think Jasper has a session on this, first thing you should do when you see this many retransmission is to rule out stupid mistakes. Like you capture the VLAN, so you capture it coming in and going out. Okay? If you capture the whole VLAN, you'll capture it as it enters the VLAN and it exits the VLAN. You end up with the same packet twice, and so you have a retransmission, a fake retransmission, right? Wireshark thinks it's 2 packets. You just happen to capture it. So one quick way you can load is that, hey, you know what? There's only 118 out of 300, 3275. It's not every packet is duplicated problem. I've ruled that out fairly quickly this way. The other way you can rule it out is by looking at duplicate acts. So retransmission is one thing. That means that I retransmitted and I saw this packet at some point in time. But duplicate act, 1, 2 here that you see, is a surefire way of saying, yep, there's real packet loss going on because there are acknowledgments that are being sent again and again to signify that packets are indeed getting lost. Okay? Make sense? All right, so let's follow my workflow. Let's get rid of this guy and scroll down. Again, it's VDI, I get it, but I still, rules are rules. So I scroll down. It's like when I play blackjack, rules are rules. Always split on 16, 2 8s. So when I scroll down to the bottom, there are 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 seconds. It seems a little high, even for VDI. I mean, there's always a blinking something in VDI. So 15 seconds seems like a long, long time. There doesn't seem to be an absolute pattern. There's 4.6 seconds happening a lot. That's kind of interesting, the delta time-wise. Okay, so I might investigate that. Why is there so many 4.6 seconds happening? There's nothing in a VDI workflow that people wait 4.6 seconds. So that's what I'm going to investigate that. There's no doubling of time. Why am I looking at doubling of time in the delta column? Because that's when a packet gets black hole and you start to double to do the binary backoff. So I look for doubling of time with retransmissions here on the right-hand side. That's a surefire way of saying the packets simply are not getting through. But let's get to this, the biggest offender. Remember I told you, sort by delta, go to the biggest offender. Let's go to him. And look at up here. And notice that this is a very beginning of a fin packet. Right? So the session is tearing down. But this is also the time when the user reported that Citrix locked up. Citrix locked up. That's what happened. That's what we're troubleshooting here. Whose fault is it? Is it the network? Is it the VDI client? Or is it the VDI server? That's what we're trying to, because if you, those three big categories, if you can remove two, it makes it a hell of a lot easier to troubleshoot either the server or the app, the network, or the client. Yes? So 192.168 is the client. So the client, here I notice there's a retransmission already. How do I know there's a retransmission already? Because my brain has been conditioned into looking at these columns, and there's a duplicate right there. Look right there. Okay? 142.456 to here, to here. Okay? So that's my sequence number starting 142.226, and then 142.226 going to 456. I know without even having to look at this column that says TCP retransmission because my brain is trained into looking at the step ladder thing. Okay, and I follow the direction of this transfer, and I can see here going from let me find another one, 141 to 226. Okay, so this is my starting sequence number, my ending sequence number, next expected sequence number. I should start with 226. I do start with 226. I go to 456. I should start at 456 here, but I don't. I'm retransmitting 226 to 456, the 230 bytes again. And it took me 550 milliseconds of timeout for that to happen. Right? So whose fault is it? Well, the server sent it. The client didn't receive it. So now you might think, I got 1 minute, why don't I put a capture packet on the client side? But the problem is this is a contact center agent working from home. I'm not going to send a sniffer there. Not realistic. But what did we learn from the beginning trace file? What tells us about the performance of a client or machine? IP ID, and the other one is window size. Are you clearing these things fast or not? So let's look at the window size here. 65535, that's good. He's caught up. Okay? Let's look at the next guy. 65, where did it go? Let me open this up a little bit more. I know I got 1 minute. 65535, that's good. He's keeping up. 65535, that's good. He's keeping up. And then our two missing packets, right? The server sent 230 bytes. The server didn't hear an acknowledgement for it, didn't get anything back. So he said, oh, you must have lost it. Let me have I have a retransmission timeout condition, and I need to retransmit because you didn't tell me anything about dupacks, missing packets, or nothing. No feedback means it's a packet was lost, retransmission timeout occurs, and I retransmit the packet. And the client says, yeah, you know what? I'm going to acknowledge you, but look at the window size. What's the window size at? 65305. So 65535 minus 65305, subtract, then the number is going to be 230 bytes. Where did we see 230 bytes just before? The exact amount of packet that was retransmitted and didn't get a feedback. Did the client receive that 200 byte packet, yes or no? Absolutely, because his window size went down by 230. Whose fault is it? The client. The client crashed. The client locks up. There's no doubt that the client is at fault because I sent you 230 bytes. The TCP stack received the 230 bytes, did its job of decrementing the window by 230 bytes, yet you didn't clear that out. So the socket closed, crashed, locked up. Something tragic happened to VDI. Okay? So this one was a quick and dirty, but it builds on the fact that we learned about looking at window size as an indicator of performance, and when things go awry, look at the window size to give you a clue about who may be at fault. Okay? With that, thank you very much, and my time is up.